determining the aspect of the variances of the material used. But in this case now, whenever I'm working out mixed variance, we noted that assuming I'm producing, say, product A, and for me to produce this product A, maybe I require several materials. Say like I require, say, material 1, 2, and 3. So our main concern whenever I'm dealing with the aspect of mixed variance is that I just want to determine if this material combined. That is the concept that I'll be looking at. Say like I need to determine the mix of material 1 to our final product, the mix of material 2 to our final product, and the mix of material 3 to our final product, because I'm taking all these components to produce this product. So basically the concept behind the mixed variances is that it will just be upon us to determine the mix of each component to our final product. And ideally, that's the concept of mixed variance. So probably for those who are not in our last class, we say that material mixed variance, first of all, we mentioned that where a product, this is for those who are not in our last class, you are doing a recap. We noted that where a product is composed of more than one ingredient, it might be necessary to determine the material mix. It might be necessary to determine material mix and material yield variance. Another dash, you also noted that these variances are broken down from material usage variances. These variances are broken down from material usage variance. These variances are broken down from material usage variances. The two variances, you are saying that mix and yield variances, they are going to be broken down from material usage variance. And I believe we had talked of material usage variance. Another dash, we also mentioned that material mix variance compares the standard mix. Material mix variance compares the standard mix and the actual mix of the material used. Ideally, I'm looking at input. And another dash, we also noted that material yield variance compares the standard quantity and the standard mix. Material yield variance compares the standard quantity and the standard mix, and this is what we've mentioned. So in our class today, for us to understand this concept very well, I want us to handle an illustration question. This illustration question is from our past paper. Yes, please.
Before we proceed to the illustration,
Uh-huh.
trouble deciphering the last statement that the material yield variance compares the standard quantity and the standard mix.
And the standard mix, yeah.
I think maybe I'd appreciate it more by first understanding what do you mean material yield means. What is exactly material yield?
On the aspect of the yield variance, the concept behind yield variance, right? So basically at this point, maybe just to break it down completely, were you in when we are dealing with the aspect of usage variance?
Yes.
So let me start from the usage variance. So that I also explain to you the concept behind yield variance. So basically, whenever we are talking of, first of all, we appreciate that these two components, they are going to come from the concept of material usage variance. So that's the first thing that we need to appreciate, that the two components of variance that you are looking at here, they are going to come from the material usage variance. And remember, we noted that whenever I'm talking of the material usage variance at this point, ideally, I'll be looking at just the component. Basically, I'll be talking of our standard. In this case, these are budgeted. What? Budgeted quantity of the materials, of which I'll be comparing that with the aspect of the actual quantity of the material. So that is the usage. Now, whenever I'm talking of the yield variance, I'm looking at a case whereby for us to use these materials that we are talking about, here I'm having a case whereby I need to produce product A. I need to produce product A. And in producing this product A, we've noted that I'm not going to use only one material. But in that case, I'll be using several materials. Like in this case, we've assumed that, term this as M1, standing for material 1, material 2, and material 3. So looking at this case, because variance is all about assisting us to compare our performance, it's all about assisting us to compare our performance. So yield will come in by comparing, like, say for example, I had budgeted to, that is a standard quantity. I had budgeted to spend, like, M1 had budgeted to use, like, say 200 kgs. M2 maybe had budgeted to use, say, like 300 kgs. M3 maybe had budgeted to use like 400 kgs. Remember, all this I'm using to produce, say, like our product A. So here comes product A is going to comprise of the three materials. Product A is going to comprise of the 3 materials. So yield will come in by comparing now what I'd budgeted to use in regard to the mix, because we know very well that, for example, if I want to determine the mix of this component to product A, first of all, I'll have to determine the total kgs that this product is going to use. Then of the total kgs that we determine, I need to determine what was the mix of material 1, what was the mix of material 2, what was the mix of material 3 to our final product that we are producing. So that will give us the aspect of what we are terming it as the standard quantity, what I'd budgeted. Then this time round, or rather the aspect of, we compare the standard quantity, what I'd budgeted. Then come to the aspect of mix. Come to the aspect of now the standard mix. The standard mix, ideally, I'm looking at it. This is what I'd budgeted. And the actual kgs that I've used, assuming the total kgs, this, mark me well, this is standard. And this is the aspect of actual. This is the actual kg that we are using. The total kgs, the entire kgs, which will comprise of M1, M2, and M3. Maybe in this case, I'm having, say, like 1,000 kgs. But on this 1,000 kgs, I need to determine the portion of M1, M2, and M3. So this is what you're terming it as the mix of the product that we are producing. I don't know if I'm clear on that.
Then my understanding is that the statement should read, variance compares the standard quantity and the actual mix, not the standard mix.
It is a standard mix.
The standard quantity is what will now result in the standard mix. And now we are now trying to compare that standard mix versus that which we actually used in the actual mix.
Remember at this point, there is a very big difference between the standard quantity and this standard mix. There is a very big difference. Because whenever I'm talking of the standard quantity, mark me well, these are what we are, I'm looking at these items as individual, right? Whereas whenever I'm talking of the mix, I'm looking at it as if they are combined together. Now it will be upon us to determine the component of each material used. In this case, I'm looking at them as individual component, whereas at this point, I'm looking at them as combined. So now it's upon us to determine the portion of all these on the combined, which I don't have, whereby you are going to determine. So I think you'll also understand it well whenever, after doing one question, it will really assist you to understand this component of standard mix. From the word go, understand that the standard quantity that you're talking about here is not the same as the standard mix. Is that okay? Yeah, let us do a question. Then I think from that point, you will be able to understand this mix that you are talking about. And also, you will be able to understand the standard quantity that we are talking about. So having that case, I think we can work out that question that I had shared initially in our screen. So let us have that question. And for those probably who have their past papers, it is a question from May 2012, question number 5, part B. Yeah, so are we able to see that question?
Yes.
We're able to see that question, all of us? Yeah? That should be May 2012, question number 5, part B.
2010.
Yeah, May 2012, question number 5, part B. I want us to be together on that question. All of us, are we on that question? For those probably who don't have, you can take a copy of that. Nataka kila mtu aseme ako comfortable, amuona swali, we proceed. Tumeshare hapo. Have you seen it?
I can see it on the screen, but you said I don't know what the screen is.
Yeah, it is. If you don't have that past paper, you can just use the one on the screen. You can take a form of either a screenshot on that question. Are we okay? We proceed? So maybe going through that question together, this is what you are told, that Chemically Limited manufactures, just a moment. So believing that all of us are able to see that question, this is what you are told, that Chemically Limited manufactures varieties of chemicals. One of the chemicals is branded Maliza and is manufactured using 3 types of ingredients: PP, KK, and MM. So we are told that Chemically Limited manufactures varieties of chemicals. One of the chemicals is branded Maliza and is manufactured using 3 types of ingredients, that is PP, KK, and MM. Then you also told that the standard ingredients, mark that very well, the standard ingredients used, the standard ingredients usage and cost for 1 unit of Maliza is as follows. So I'm given ingredient PP, I'm given 30 kgs at 0.8 shillings per gram. I'm given KK, which is I'm going to use 25 grams at 0.12 per kg. Then I'm also given 15 grams at 0.10 per gram. In our additional information, this is what we are told, that during the month of March 2012, Chemically Limited manufactured 115,000 units. Mark that very well. During the month of March 2012, Chemically Limited manufactures 115,000 units of Maliza using 3,500 kg of PP. Mwanzo pale juu tumepatiwa nini? Grams ama kg? Tumepatiwa grams, right? Then additional information, one examiner is telling us that during the month of March 2012, Chemically Limited manufactured 115,000 units of Maliza using 35 kg of PP, 2,000 kg of KK, 1,900 kg of MM. So this is the actual that I'm given, the usage. So talk of note 2, we are told that Chemically Limited has used activity-based costing to allocate its overheads for a number of years. Chemically Limited has used activity-based costing to allocate its overheads for a number of years. One of the main overheads is machine setup costs. During the month of March, the following information was available in relation to the setup cost. So basically, if you can recall the concept of, probably you did it at your basic level of management accounting, whenever we are talking of absorption of overheads, ideally you normally talk of the aspect of traditional way, of absorption, and you normally talk of the aspect of activity-based method or costing of absorbing our overheads. So this time round, the examiner is telling us that the company was using ABC. And that will remind me, we did a concept of activity-based budgeting, right? Tulifanya ABB ama tukufanya? Did it tackle activity-based budgeting? We did activity-based budgeting, right? So, with the same concept, in this case, kuna wale wananyamaza wanashangaa activity-based budgeting ni nini. Lakini tulikuwa tumefanya. So, you'll find that in this case, the same concept, ideally, we can also apply it when it comes to the aspect of activity-based budgeting. Because I remember, when you are doing activity-based budgeting, at least we widen our scope and also looked at the concept behind ABC. So, this time around, the examiner is telling me that this company was using activity-based costing, where I'm given this data. We are told that during the month of March 2012, the following information was available in relation to setup cost, where I'm given the total number of units produced, of course, based on what we had under ABC. I'm given the aspect of total number of setups, then I'm given the total setup costs required. Number one, calculate the following variances for the ingredients in Maliza, that is material usage variance, correct? Number two, material mix variance, and also I'm also required to, so basically we are main element talk of material mix variance, material usage variance, and I'm also required to share the question. For those who have the question, so I'm told material usage, material mix, material lead, expenditure variance, and efficiency variance, and efficiency variance, and efficiency variance. So that is what I do have. So quickly, I want you to give me material usage variance. Because remember, we've noted that we have appreciated that these two variances will come from the usage variance. And I believe we had to tackle the aspect of usage variance. So, on that note, I want you to give me material usage variance. Remember, in this case, you are talking of how many materials? You are talking of how many materials? Na saizi? Okay, so opso sijajiongelesha sana. So I'm saying that in the required number one, the examiner wants us to determine the aspect of material usage variance. And the question is, si tulikuwa tumefanya material usage variance? Had we done material usage variance? Tulifanya ama hatukufanya? We did material usage variance. And in this case, how many materials are we looking at? 3 materials, right? So, number one, I want you to give me the material usage variance for each and every material. Tafadhali, naomba unipatie material usage variance. Give me the material usage variance. Give me the material usage variance. Give me the material usage variance in that question. Let us work it out quickly. Give me the material usage variance. Give me the material usage variance. Give me the material usage variance. John, ushamaliza? Shale? Yeah?
Please share the question.
Okay, right away.
Thank you.
Hapo iko sawa. Is that right, Corazon?
Yes, thank you.
So let us work it out quickly. Na mnaongea na jirani pia, eh? Whitney anaweza uliza Sheila. Sheikh uko sawa?
Yeah.
Aha, Sheikh unaweza uliza Dolphin swali, Sospita anaweza uliza iPhone swali, kuna Karo hapo anaweza uliza Lizzy swali. So make it interactive, discuss, uliza mwenzako swali mahali uelewi. Usikubali kukufa peke yako. Usikubali kufa peke yako. Mtu asikubali kukufa peke yake. Nani ashamaliza? Nani ashamaliza? Linda. Linda. Shamaliza?
Mwalimu, are we supposed to convert the grams to kgs ama kgs to grams?
Sasa hapo ni ujanja yako sasa, Linda. Hapo ni ujanja wako sasa, si ndio? Kwa sababu unaona ziko tofauti. I'm having grams na tuko na nini? Kg, si ndio?
Yes.
So ujanja yako though it should give us the same answer. Kwa wale utafanya either way. But I'll advise utumie na ile yenye ulikuwa umepatiwa pale juu, utumie grams.
Thank you. Okay. Sicha.
Yes? Incorrect aje?
Ukifanya hiyo multiplication with the cost.
Upon hiyo inakupatia ngapi? 30 times 30 times 0.8.
Hiyo ni 24, hiyo ya pili ni 3.
The aspect of 25 by 0.12. Na hiyo ingine 15 by 0. 15 0.1. 1.5. But because I was given on a per unit basis, so I'll advise wacha tuache tu vile ziko hivyo. Wacha tuache vile ziko tu hivyo. Whereby I'm given 25 grams at 0.12, because if you take just a moment, let me tell you how they have arrived at that. Where's my calc?
kupata ndo realistic. Hii moja ni 0.8 iko kitu 1.2 equal
1.2 grams. Unajua tuna
Na
actual
work
past
out
paper,
like
tuna actual past paper. Juzi msenye zimetaipiwa. So bado mwenye sina.
hatuwezi pata mahali.
2012 hakuna hiyo. Talk to me.
But most probably hii price iko na variance kubwa sana from 0.8 to 0.1.
0.1. Unajua pia ina dependence yako ni actual.
Na kuweka utaona na si ndio hii answer yake huko.
Nani? Hiyo tu 0.8, 0.1 to 0.1 kg.
25 times 15 kg.
Tungekuwa na actual past paper hizi masa sizi aminigi sana. Hizi sina. So juu kama hapa ni 1000 grams makes 1 nini si ndio? Kg. That your body time makes sense. 25 by 0.12.
Labda some about 2 na hivi figures.
Hizi tungekuwa na actual past paper. Maybe I think actual past paper inaonyesha hiyo.
Iko ni error ilikuwa nayo.
Nani ashamaliza? So I want the usage variance. Remember we've said you are going to use that the same figures. Nani yako na actual past paper? Actual past paper, were they the same figures ama ilikuwa different? Because it's not upon us to correct the examiner. We use what you have been given. Past paper, actual past paper, nani yako nayo? Are these figures the same? They are the same. 0.8, 0.12 na 0.1. So let's just use that if it is also in our actual past papers. The actual units we are using what I'm given there on note 1. During the month of March, Chemically manufactures 115,000 units of Maliza. That's the product that you manufactured. Remember in note 3, that was in regard to the absorption that they were using. So for in regard to variances, tutatumia hizo za kwanza pale juu. Hiyo note 1. Material? We'll just compare our answers. Kama hiyo ni correct or work na hiyo. Hizo zingine umaliza pia? $1,200 kwa which material? Kg ama grams? Kg ama umetumia kg ama umetumia grams? Kg. So just 75,000. Hiyo ni material gani? KK. We'll just compare our answers. We should be having the same figures. We should be having the same figures. We should be having the same figures. Kwa sababu, first of all, si unaanza na formula, material usage variance. Can you remind us the formula? I'll be talking of, first of all, I'm comparing what? Minus actual. All this based on what? Standard price, right? And remember tulisema hii hatutawahi patiwa, si ndio? Standard quantity hatutawahi patiwa. It will be upon us to determine the standard quantity. So first of all, we compare all of us. In this case, I was given materials, 3 materials. So first thing first, I need the standard quantity. What's the standard quantity for material? The first one that I'm given, talk of material or rather what I was given there, PP. Ngapi tunapata? So I'm having material PP, talk of PP, 30 grams. 30 grams, 30 grams, right? Acha tuone. The other one again, you just compare answers. KK. $25 grams. What about the other material, MM? Gapi? 15 grams. Okay. All of us, are you getting the same figures? In regard to the standard quantity?
Yeah.
So, let us work it out. So, how will we determine our standard quantity? Kumbusha? How do we determine our standard quantity?
Standard quantity of material per unit.
Uh-huh.
Multiplied by actual unit.
So to determine standard quantity, normally talk of the standard quantity of the material per unit, right? Times what? Actual units, right? Actual units. So let's start with our PP. What is the standard quantity of the material per unit? Sindoyo 30, right? Because I was given there, for me to produce 1 unit of Maliza, I required 30 grams of material PP, right? So that gave us standard quantity of material per unit times our actual units. What is our actual units in this case? 115,000. So that should give us how many grams? Because remember, these are in grams. 34? 50,000. Talk of KK. Standard quantity of the material per unit ya KK ilikuwa ni how many grams? 25. Times the actual units, which is 115,000. To give us ngapi? 75,000. Talk of MM. 15 times 115. To give us how much? How many grams? 1725,000. So these are our standard quantity. So therefore, we can proceed and determine our usage variance. We can proceed and determine our material usage variance, because now if I want material usage variance, we start with the PP. What is our standard price of PP? I was given how much? 0.8. So I'm going to have 0.8 into Standard quantity tumepata 3450 minus what is our actual quantity of material PP? Very good. Note 1, tumeambiwa kwamba that I'm having maliza the actual quantity that we used 3500 kilograms. And remember, these figures of ours are in grams, right? So it will be advisable also for us to convert this kg into grams. So 3500 kg will be equal to how many grams? I should be talking of? So that should give us a variance of? Okay. I'm done with, yes? Yes, please?
The board is blurry. I can't see your board.
The board is, Geoffrey, check it out. Wengine body iko bla ama wengine tuko sawa? Corazon. Ebu angalia network, angalia network yako kama iko sawa. Kama wengine iko sawa pia yako inafaa kuwa sawa.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are done with PP. Tuende kwa KK. Si KK sasa hata hakuna haja mwalimu amalize ink kwa pen. Si mtanipatia tu figure hapa ni ngapi? How many grams? 105. Adverse ama favorable? Favorable. Aya, tuende kwa huyu mwingine anaitwa nani? MM. Final figure ni gani hapa? 17,500? Adverse. Very good. So we are done with that first part. The other part, tulikuwa tunahitajika kutafuta nini? What were we supposed? Material mix variance. But before that, can you give me the total? Hapa tunapata what will be our total? Material usage variance. Total material usage variance itakuwa ni ngapi tukiadd hiyo? Just add for me 40,000 adverse, 105 favorable, 17,500 adverse. 47,500 favorable. Okay. Are we getting the same answers? Ama kuna ule anapata answer tofauti?
Yes.
Same answers? Okay. So if you are good with that, now we proceed to the next question where we are required to determine material mix variance. So this is where I want you to concentrate very well. Material mix variance, MMV. Tulisema at this point, what will we be comparing? Standard mix? Yes? Yes, Dave, ama? Aha. Oh, ambia wenzako atakusaidia. Dave anauliza ache space inatoshanaje kwa kitabu yake ama ina depend on writing? Dave, umesaidika, si ndio? Pole, naelewa mahali huko. Huko hapo bado ama ushatoka huko? Sasa wacha sitataja, wengine wasijue uko wapi. Wacha mimi ndo nijue uko wapi. Yeah? Saizi je? Nani mwingine anaonyesha blur ama ni wengine iko sawa ama pia wengine tuna hiyo shida?
Iko sawa. Iko sawa. Mwalimu, I can't see anything. Sasa I don't know if it's my internet.
So kuna wale iko sawa, kuna wale iko blur. Maybe in that case angalia pia net yako, ama ukitaka iko rahisi enda kwa screen ya mwalimu. If you are using your phone, just go to the screen then double tap. Double tap kwa screen ya mwalimu if you are using your phone. If you are using a laptop or computer, go to the option button. Hizo button tatu zenye wameonyesha pale, click then pin my video on your screen. If you are using your phone, go to my screen, hiyo yenye muonyesha darasa digital, double tap. If you are using your computer or laptop, enda kwa hizi option button, ile imeonyesha hizi dots tatu. Click pale alafu you pin the video. So kama bado itakuwa ni blur, angalia internet yako, labda internet yako ndo iko na shida kidogo. Tuko sawa sasa? Are we good? Okay.
Yeah, hii swali ya kwamba vile mtu anaweza pata hiyo actual usage per unit.
Kupata nini?
Hiyo actual usage per unit.
Actual usage, you're talking of, in this case, this material usage, jamaa unaongelea actual quantity. Actual,
Hizi ifanya per unit.
sikuelewi vizuri. Hebu pose your question clearly.
As in, venye the swali inatuambia the standard quantity per unit. So is it possible to just have like now per unit so you find the actual quantity per unit?
Not really. Remember, in this case, you can't use on a per unit because the concept behind usage is that I want to determine, first of all, the usage in regard to the materials that we've used, not per se the aspect of the total units. Because remember, the first time that we started by this note and we said that it will be upon us to differentiate between a product or a unit and material. Kuna tofauti hapa? Kuna tofauti, si ndio? So for us in usage, my main concentration is in regard to the aspect of what? The aspect of material. So we normally determine the standard quantity by taking what we've taken here, the standard quantity of the material per unit and the actual units, ideally to give us what I had anticipated to use, the material that I had anticipated to use to produce one unit. Based on what? Based on the actual units that we produced using the materials. That's why we are determining by, that's why we are required to determine the SQ. Whereas the actual quantity, in this case, this is the actual quantity of the materials. Whereas this formula will give us the standard quantity of the materials, not units. That's why we have to work it out on the material. Remember, we say that this quantity that you're talking about here, these are materials in regard to the materials, not units. Not units. Units itakuja tu to affect mali, probably you are looking at the final product. But whenever I'm in the production process, ideally I'll be looking what I'm consuming. So understand that this SQ and AQ, these are materials, not units. Is that okay? Yeah, always, first of all, always at the back of your mind, jua hii SQ na AQ tunaangalia materials. Hizo si units. Okay? Okay, so having that, we say that a material mix variance, we noted that I'll be comparing the standard mix of the actual materials and, of course, the actual mix that we'll be having. So we are saying that MV material mix variance, this is what we'll be having. I'll be having the standard mix, of course, of the actual mark it well. Ikiwezekana hii formula andika na kalamu ya red. Standard mix of the actual input. And whenever I'm talking of input, these are the materials that we are talking about. With less the actual mix we less the actual mix, and in that case I'm going to base all this with our standard price. We are going to base all that with our standard price because I need them in value, because these are just in a unit of measure. To get in value, I have to multiply it by our standard price. I have to multiply it by our standard price, So we are talking of the standard mix of the actual input. Who can try to assist us on that statement? Nani anaweza tusaidia? I need the standard mix of the actual input. The standard mix of the actual input. The standard mix of the actual input. Yes, please. Which does the same thing. It's only that at this point we've taken it together, the standard mix of the actual input and actual mix. But avoid to use the aspect of division because that will mix you up. Kabisa, totally. Yeah. So I want us to go together and identify, first of all, I want us first of all to determine our actual input. What was our actual input based on our question? What are the actual input, the actual materials that we used? Total materials that we used ilikuwa ni how many kgs ama how many grams? Yeah? Dave? Hiyo swali ilikuwa umeshare hapo. Ilikuwa this is May 2012, si ndio? Ama has it been shared? Let me check it out. Umeona Dave? Ndo hiyo chat, May 2012 question 5 part B. The question was shared. Let me share it again, Dave. Anaitwa Dave, my good friend. Hiyo iko sawa? Mwanza screenshot hiyo kuswali. Stop share. Good free please. Share my screen. So having that case, nataka mtu anipatie actual input. Na tukiangalia actual input tunajiuliza how many kgs or grams tulitumia. First of all tulikuwa na how many materials? Tulikuwa na PP, tukawa na KK na tukawa na this is MM, right? So what was our actual material that we used for PP? Yes? Yeah? 3,500,000 unit PP, right? KK?
2 million.
MM?
1.9.
Total actual input.
7.4.
Grams, right? So in that case, we've determined the actual input. In that case, we've determined the actual input. We have determined the actual input. Now, I want us to determine what was our standard mix, the budgeted mix to our total input. And how will you determine this mix? So this is where that question that was asked earlier on, this is where it will fit in for you to differentiate between the standard quantity and the aspect of the standard mix. So in this case, I'm going to ask myself, yes, I had product PP, tukawa na KK, tukawa na MM. Yes?
Your screen is blurred. You don't have blur.
Eh?
Yeah.
Hapo iko tu sawa. Kwa wengine, nani mwingine kuna hiyo shida? Ni kila mtu akona hiyo shida kwani? On my side, the camera is very clear. So what you do, just give me a moment, alafu we work it out. What you do. Si network iko strong, kwa nini unakuwa na shida? Inaweza kuwa network yetu, lakini singekuwa inaonyesha unstable hapa. Utakata pitisha nyuma. What you do, let me show you something quickly so that it moves smoothly. Kuna iko sawa. Hebu kuja kwa sababu kama kwa msiko clear sawa. Iko clear. So kile mwisho tu yetu. Sio ndio nafaa kuchukua nayo. Hapo iko sawa ama bado iko blur? Si net iko sawa kabisa. Iko sawa? Au wengine iko sawa? Corazon? Corazon iko sawa?
No, but you can continue. Linda will send me the notes later.
Ayo yeye, kwanza ingekuwa tu sawa tu.
I'm trying to follow your voice.
Uzuri au wengine iko sawa? Corazon, nimekuwekea 100 MBs kwa phone yako. Tidha, wacha kutumia wifi. Inabidi ndo wapite mtihani, wasilaumu mwalimu. So talk of our PP, in this case, what we want to do is to determine what was our standard quantity. Standard quantity per unit tulikuwa tunaona tuko na ngapi? For PP tulikuwa na 30, si ndio? KK tulikuwa na ngapi? And MM 15, si ndio? So that should give us a total of 70. Up to there, are we together? In this case, I want to determine the total. First of all, remember I'm looking at each and every component. So that should give us, I want to determine now the mix. And to determine the mix is just kind of out of the total, what is the proportion of PP to our final product, what is the proportion of KK to our final product, and what is the proportion of MM to our final product. Because for me to produce this product, I'll require the three materials. So tunataka kudetermine proportion ya PP to our final ilikuwa ni ngapi, proportion ya KK to our final ilikuwa ni ngapi, na MM ilikuwa ni ngapi. So that in this case, yeah?
This is the reason in one of these mara ya kwanza. What is per unit ama for the total number of units. Remember the actual units like 160,000 units.
Units, yeah? Na hii ni grams. Remember hii ni material. Hii si units. Units ni final product.
I think I understand her.
Yeah?
Kuna hii inachukua tunalete standard quantity the 3.45 million grams.
Gani hii?
Yeah. Are we using that? How much tunatumia?
Remember, we are not using, in this case, this was the aspect of what I used entirely, the total that you used to produce the total units. But in this time round, I'm looking at what I used to produce 1 unit. Because if you are able to understand unit, this is a final product. And the aspect of material, this is what I use to produce what? My final product. So this one here, we determine this by, in this case, we are looking at the total number of units. Our final product that we produced was 115,000. So it was upon us to determine out of the 115,000 units that we produced, what did I use, or rather what had I planned to use in regard to the material. So that's why we're looking at PP. We noted that the PP, for me to produce 1 unit, I required 30 grams of PP, what I'd budgeted. And what is the final unit that we produce? 115. So in this case, it was giving us what the standard form of the budgeted materials that I'm going to use. So this is the budgeted materials, not units. Units is the final product. And that's why also here, we are just on the aspect of material up to me units. Yeah? Yes? Uh-huh.
Actually, I'm thinking it's pretty much the same thing because if what we're looking for in this standard is to find out the proportions, more or less like a ratio, the ratio that you bring use per material.
Mm-hmm.
Then if I have to use the standard quantity for the actual units produced, using now this 34, 50, 28, 75, and 1725.
Mm-hmm.
So I get a proportion of PP based on the total actual units of 150,000. It will be the same
Mm-hmm.
as the proportion in 1 unit.
And that is not the, that's, you'll find the same answer, right? But remember, first of all, we are not working, or rather our main focus is not to arrive at a particular answer, is to understand the process, not only for exams, but also when you go to aspect of assuming you are to advise the management on how they should achieve a certain component. The right way should be this, as much as you are going to arrive at the same answer, but what about the process?
Teacher,
Yeah?
now I have a question. I'm looking at the question.
Uh-huh.
It says, can you produce the 115 total product, the end product?
The end product. Uh-huh.
My question is,
Yeah?
this 30,000 grams
Uh-huh.
that you're talking about, why didn't we not use a percentage of the 30,000? Like,
Uh-huh.
do 30 plus 25 plus 15, we get a total. And then we say, out of the total, let's say the total is around 70. Out of the 70, we have 30 over 70, we get a percentage, and then we multiply by 150.
You know, like in that case, we'll be using form of a mix. Our main component, it was to determine, though you might arrive at the same component, but our main focus is to determine on individual. Don't confuse this one with this one, because this one, I want a mix, because I'll be having 30 of 70, 25 of 70, aspect of 15 of 70. So what you are saying is that if I was to use this one on this point here, whereby assuming I'm having 30 of 70 times aspect of 115,000, that is what you are talking about. Yeah? This is what you are saying, right? Trust me, you will not get the actual, or rather not arrive at the correct material that you had anticipated to use. Because in this case, what you are looking at, what you should put in mind, rather what you should grasp in mind is that, please, I want you not to confuse the units and the materials. And that is what I insisted when we started the concept of variance. Don't confuse the material and units. In this case, remember we are using these units to arrive at the total material that you use to produce the entire units in the company.
Sir,
Yes?
just starting from where I have left at,
Mm-hmm.
the formula in a summer, standard mix of the actual input.
Of the actual input, yeah?
That is, so based on what this formula is saying, we're looking at the standard mix of 150,000 units.
Of the actual input. Input is material that we've used, not the final product. Remember, these are the input. Input is what is going to give us our final product. Input is what is going to give us our final product. So whenever I'm talking of input, is the material that we are talking about. And if you are clear enough on what we wrote in our last class, we say that I'll be talking of the standard mix. We compare the standard mix and the actual mix of the actual material. That is what you mentioned. See there? Material use. Remember this point, please, and just try to understand the difference between unit and material. So this input, just take it now practically out of class. For me to arrive at the final product, I'm going to use various components. So these are the inputs that we're using to arrive at the final product. Input is not our final product. It's only that is the component that is going to assist us to arrive at our final product. Yeah? Is that okay? So this what I'm looking at this, remember, like we're talking of the standard mix of the actual input. So what is my standard mix here? The standard mix, what had I budgeted? At budgeted, remember standard is the same as budgeted, right? So I'd budgeted to use 30 grams of PP to produce 1 unit. I'd budgeted to use 25 grams of KK and 15 grams of MM. So how will I determine now the mix? The mix is kind now of the portion. The portion is that for PP, therefore, for me to produce 1 unit complete, I required 70 grams. But this 70 grams, the portion of 70, or rather the portion of PP to the 70 is 30. That's why I'm having the 30 of 70, 25 of 70, 15 of 70 to give us what? The standard mix. Standard mix now of what? Of the actual input. And our actual input in this case tomorrow ilikuwa ni ngapi? Actual input. Tafadhali, huyo nani ndiye anasema 115? Actual input, narudia, input is not the final product. Input ni material. Input ni material of the actual input. Ama niweke hapa /material. Battery tukaona badilisha battery kwa kamera. Iko sawa sasa? Si ndio? Iko sawa? So kindly again I repeat, hii hata kama nikirudia mara ngapi ndo tuelewe nitarudia. This input is material. Usichanganye na the aspect of units. The input that you're talking about here is material. So standard mix. This is our mix. This is a standard mix. The standard mix. This is a standard mix. This is a standard mix of the actual input. Our actual input, we've agreed that the total kilograms, in this case we've used grams, the total grams that we used to produce our final product, to produce the final products was 7,400. So we are comparing, I want the portion of now product, or the portion of material PP to the entire grams or materials that you use, the input that you use. So that's why I'm talking of the standard mix of that proportion. Compare it to the standard mix. Remember, this was the standard mix. And this is where it will come clearly to that who had asked the aspect of the standard mix and the aspect of the standard quantity. So this was our standard quantity of the material, and this is what I'm going to determine here should give us the standard mix of the material that we used total. So that case, how much will you be having? How many grams will you be talking about? Product PP tokona how many grams? So this is 25 or 70. Na usikubali tuendelee kama hujaelewa. So hapa tunakuwa na how many grams? 31? 428.5. So tuchukue 0.9. Tuchukue 429. So we take 3,171,429. What about the other one? The same case, 7,400. 7,400. 26? 857. Na huyo wa mwisho tutakuwa na ngapi? 1585? 714? 714. So that is our standard mix of the actual input. Standard mix of the actual input. I'm having it at that point. So in this case, our main concern was to determine what? Material mix variance. So can you give me the mix variance then on each material? Yeah? Yes, please. Mm-hmm.
So far we have a standard mix, which we have done
yeah, this is a standard mix of the actual input, yeah? What is it? The actual mix, see, we had already determined it here.
Actual mix sasa ndio 3.5 divided.
Isn't our actual the aspect of actual mix? Yeah? Share the question, Godfrey. The question is shared now, right? Hmm? The question is shared, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so give me the aspect of, give me our mix variance. So in this case, I will work out for PP